Behind all of the excitement of the Brock Purdy extension, the 49ers quietly made another brilliant move, in my humble opinion. In this video, I'm going to tell you why I think it's a brilliant move and why the 49ers absolutely needed to make a move just like this. Hit subscribe for more daily 49ers content. I very much appreciate all of you. But let's first start off with a little bit of a prerequisite. Let's talk about this guy right here. Of course, you guys all know Justin Tucker. Now, Justin Tucker, let's just call this the devil's advocate argument. Should the 49ers have brought in Justin Tucker, who has been released from the Baltimore Ravens? Now, critics would rightfully say that Justin Tucker has not been himself of late, and he carries with him a lot of personal issues around, recent allegations that have come out against him, several recent allegations that have come out against him, and that would make him a concern for any team in the National Football League committing to him for the future. He's also 35. I'll throw that out there, but let me know in the comments as we're getting into the kicker competition conversation. Let me know in the comments if you think the 49ers should be going after a guy like this. And let me know if you feel like that would have been a bad move. But behind the understandable buzz created by Brock Purdy extension, the 49ers quietly brought in more kicking competition for Jake Moody, an 8-year veteran Greg Joseph, who went to Florida Atlantic University. Evan Anderson is the other guy we recently got, within the last year out of FAU. But at one point, he was a mainstay in Minnesota for the Vikings. But outside of that, definitely more of a journeyman type of kicker. Greg Joseph holds the NFL record for the most game-winning field goals in a season. So that is, in that regard, he's at least at some point been a guy with stones. And that's a fear that a lot of people have about Jake Moody. Is he a guy that when the pressure's on the line, can we truly count on him? Now, let's compare stats, okay? What I'm going to do here, we're going to have the gold standard in this case be Justin Tucker during his best years, of course. And then we're also going to have Jake Moody, his stats on the screen, plus we're going to start with new 49er signing, Greg Joseph. When we look at Greg Joseph's stats, there are a couple things that stick out to me, starting with his lifetime field goal percentage at 82.3%, which is decent. It's not the best in the league, but it is pretty good when you think of lifetime stats. He has played in 57 games, so he is a seasoned veteran. Yes, that's not the exact number that would work out for 8 years. He has bounced around a little bit at times, but again, those 3 years in Minnesota were pretty meaningful. Then if you look at that 40 range, now anything beyond 40 yards is, I think for me, the sweet spot is that 40 to 49 stat, because frankly, you should not miss anything less than 40 yards. You really shouldn't. And if you have one fluke here and there, I'm not too freaked out about it. When you get in that 50-plus range, now you're getting into that range where you're kind of like anything above 50% is decent. Anything above 60% is very, very good over a lifetime of a career, okay? Now, in that 40 to 49 range, I think, is where you find some of the most telling information about a kicker, their ability to hit a field goal that at 45 yards would put the other team in pretty good field position if you mess it up. So there's always pressure when you get above 40 yards, always. So anyway, he is 27 for 38 in his career in that 40 to 49 yard sweet spot, in my opinion. His longs include a 61-yarder. His longs, to be frank, like they're not that different from a lot of other kickers out there. And then some of this data is a little bit tricky because you've got like multiple teams he was on in 2024. So some of these stats look a little bit funny if you get into the nitty-gritty on them. But just give you, he's at least got 61 yards of NFL experience, okay? Now, if we compare him to Jake Moody, over his very short career, has an overall field goal percentage of 76%, his best ever year at 84%, okay? Which is, I'd say they're actually probably pretty comparable when it comes to the field goal percentage, except Jake Moody hasn't done it over as long of a time span, so that would be in favor of Greg Joseph. Then when you look at that 40 to 49 range, you're at 10 of 17, so not great. 6 of 12 for the 50-yarders there. So you're not even above 50% there. That's not great either. At least Greg Joseph would have him on the 50 pluses. And his longs, again, he doesn't have enough data to really back that up because those are so situationally based. You have to have opportunities to kick it over 60 yards, which don't happen super often. And when you do, you have to make them, which is a tough kick to make. So all of that being said, I'd say even just on paper, the only thing that Jake Moody would have over Greg Joseph would be longevity, or like longevity in terms of his age. He has a lot longer left. Greg Joseph, 30 years old, versus Jake Moody having a lot more life to live in the National Football League. If he can make it, we'll have to wait and see. But then when you compare it to the gold standard, okay, so this is the gold standard. We understand when we say gold standard, we're talking about a guy who's a freak in terms of his ability, or at least over the most of Justin Tucker's career, okay? I had to cut off a few of the years on there because I just couldn't fit all of the data on one screen, and it would get too small if I made it any smaller than that. So when we look at Justin Tucker's career, he is almost at 90% field goal percentage over the life of his career, which is incredible considering he's played in 98 games. That is pretty... Wait. It's got to be more than that, right? Am I wrong? Whatever. That's what the stat says, so I'm just going to go with it. 417 made field goals out of 468 tries, right? That's pretty crazy. But when you look at that, 1 yard to 39 yards, Justin Tucker's been absolute money. So has Greg Joseph. He's been money in that range. When you get into that 40 to 49 yard, you start to see where Justin Tucker is separating himself from the rest. I mean, he's 67% in 50-plus yards. That's pretty incredible. 67%, 64 out of 96. And then in the 40 to 49 range, he's 120 out of 136, which is insane stats for that distance range. That's where he sets himself apart. Of course, he's had that 66-yarder in, it's just off this screen. It was 2021. He had that 66-yarder incredible field goal kick. But most of his longs kind of range in that high 50s to low 60s range. When you look at the guys all on paper, you see what the 49ers see in Greg Joseph. You see the opportunity they have there. We are maybe mincing numbers just a little bit here, but overall, I want to get to the most important part of this is not we signed a guy who's a great kicker. That's not the point of this story. Sometimes that's how that goes, but really the big picture here for me is why did the 49ers bring this guy in and the value of bringing him in? So we know that Jake Moody needs legit competition. We know that Kyle Shanahan said weeks ago he planned on giving Jake Moody good competition in the form of a veteran. And so far, all we really have is Kenneth Almendarez, who's a guy from Honduras, who won the Lou Groza Award as well as Jake Moody as the top kicker in college football in 2024 with Louisiana. So there is a shot now to go and get a guy, to have a guy who could be a rookie, just like Jake Moody, who could have all the potential in the world. However, the fear for me is he just another Jake Moody? We won't know that until he has a couple years of experience in the NFL. And we don't know what he does under pressure in NFL kicks when it really matters yet. A veteran in the competition was promised to us by Kyle Shanahan weeks ago, and so this feels like a very, very important inclusion to me. And to have a guy who has decent stats, that makes me feel better as well. Is the competition good enough for you, though? That's the real question I want to know. Comment below if you feel like a Jake Moody competition is good enough. Is it good enough for the 49ers to just say, we'll do a competition? Or should the 49ers have cut Jake Moody and just built it up from scratch and say, you got Kenny Almendarez and you brought in Greg Joseph, and now you've got these two guys here, and we'll see what we can put together? Or do you buy into the idea that Jake Moody was injured last year? And so last year's stats bring down his average numbers, but over the life of his career, it's going to be a blip. Do you buy into the idea that Jake Moody needed a new placeholder? Do you buy into those ideas or not? Because that's, I think, what this is going to come down to. Now, bringing in real life competition, a guy like Greg Joseph, who has 8 years of veteran experience, who currently holds an NFL record as a kicker, like that will add a little bit of pressure on Jake Moody's shoulders. But I don't think it's going to be the kind of pressure that would perfectly imitate the pressure that you feel in an NFL game. So I don't know I don't know. I really am genuinely on the fence about how the 49ers have handled this and if this is the right way they should have handled this. It makes sense from a value perspective because they drafted him, but then that brings up another question. Should they have drafted him in the first place? Should he have been a third-round draft pick? Was it worth the 49ers putting in all of that draft capital in a guy that he was third round, right? Third or fourth. He's one of those, okay? Early day two. Or day two. I think he was a day 2 pick. So yeah, it would be third round. Anyway, whatever the case is, I feel like personally, this is just my take. You let me know what you think in the comments. I feel like it makes sense overall why the 49ers would not just completely kick the guy out. If you think that injury is related, if you think that high ankle sprain from horribly trying to tackle for special teams, if you think that that's the reason, or if you think that the placeholder is the reason, then okay. I'm going to be okay with that reality. You let me know what you think in the comments. Appreciate all of you guys all the time. We are how many days away? We are 10 days away from phase 2 OTAs, which is exciting. And it's going to be fun because we have Brock Purdy signed, all that good stuff. Another video on him coming out tomorrow or the next day probably, because there's just been a lot of information going around, a lot of really interesting storylines to talk about. So I'm looking forward to all of that. Very much appreciate all you guys. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend.